All right, so we're super excited to be here at the Greenbrier to start our preparation for the 2023 season in earnest with training camp. Um, being here is just a phenomenal opportunity. I mean, you all can see how beautiful it is out here. It's my first time, but it's been awesome. And I actually want to start off with a couple thank yous because I don't think people realize how hard it is to move your entire football operations to a remote location here, obviously in West Virginia. Starts with Phil Dangerfield, Abir Chaudhry, Chavis Cook for handling everything logistics related. Our equipment group led by Brad Mellon, our video crew led by Rob Pavlis, and what we think is the best grounds crew in the NFL. They all did a great job of making sure the setup here is exactly what we need. We looked at the Greenbrier as a unique opportunity for us, coming back early for the Hall of Fame game. To do a couple things. Number one, really just focus on the work, in a very, isolated environment, and also give us some extra time to just come together and bond and gel as a team. I want to commend the coaching staff. I thought they did a great job of laying the foundation for our organization this spring, and we're looking forward to building upon that over the next several weeks in training camp. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Andrew, after the Greenbrier roster move, why haven't you seemed fit to add a defensive tackle?
Yeah. So Tony, I think one of the big, one of the big things that we do early in training camp is really just assess the roster. We haven't seen a lot of our players in pads in a new defensive system. We do like a number of the individuals that we have in that room currently. Obviously, it's unfortunate we're moving on from Perrin after a year, but he, like a number of players on our roster, were really competing for a role, competing for a roster spot. So we like the mix of players that we have. Across all positions, we'll see how we feel as we come to the middle of camp, and then reassess the roster from there.
Andrew, how disappointing was it that Perry wasn't able to make it to year two after being a draft pick?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's probably less to do with draft pick or non-draft pick, but the fact that you ultimately want any player that you bring into the organization to maximize their ability, maximize their time with the team. You realize that's not always going to happen, and ultimately it's about putting the team first and making sure that you have guys that buy in.
Any regret about not cutting him after the April incident?
Honestly, like, we take every situation individually and work from it from there. We thought the proper time to move on was last week right before camp, and kind of leave it at that.
Is that like an opportunity to take a minute to sort of reevaluate the process of drafting in? Of course, you had the issues last year with some of the suspensions and the off-field stuff. Do you kind of reevaluate anything?
I wouldn't necessarily go that far, Dan. I think anytime you bring an individual into the organization, it's about understanding the risk that may entail, whether it may be on-field, off-field injury, so on and so forth, and then trying to provide an environment that allows them to be successful like they may have been either at their previous stop or you're in college. You're not always able to replicate that. You're not always able to do that successfully, but to me, it's a little bit about knowing what you're bringing in and how to support them.
I asked this not because Davon Jones didn't practice today, but are you comfortable with the backup defensive tackle?
Yes, but probably to the question earlier about defensive tackle. Oftentimes when you put the team together in the spring, you have an idea of how you assume it's going to play out. It never goes perfectly, and training camp, whether it's through performance or injuries, that's a big time of the calendar for us to evaluate the team. But we do feel good about our tackle depth as we currently stand.
Andrew, go ahead.
I was going to just ask you about Marquise Goodwin. When did you really kind of know that this was going to be an issue? How what's the outcome?
Yeah, first and foremost, with Marquise, our priority is making sure that he's safe and healthy. From my perspective, I feel like we are very thankful that he spoke up. At the time that it really, popped up, as you mentioned, like kind of spring, right at the end of minicamp. It could have been very, very easy for him to go on break, travel with his family, and it's something that was an unknown. Would have been an unknown that, hopefully would not have caused more complications in the future. So we're just thankful that he said something, and we were able to get him the kind of on the treatment plan to get back on track. Obviously, there's not a definitive timetable. We're hopeful that we can get him back, but our primary concern is just his health and safety.
Was there anything in the physicals or anything that, like when you looked at requiring
No, not that. It's not. So it's well, without going into it, it's not typically it's not the type of thing that you would find in that type of exam.
Andrew,
Yeah.
your star running back is under contract and happy, which is kind of a unique situation, at least this week in the league. What's your take on running back situation in general? I know that's kind of broad, but how the position seems to be undervalued, and these guys are kind of screaming right now about it.
Yeah, I think as you look at our sport, it has changed from, let's call it the 80s in the 90s, where at that point a lot of offenses were built on maybe a bell cow runner. I think now unequivocally the central protagonist in our sport is the quarterback, and as a result, positions that are the quarterback plus positions that are tied to the passing game, the market has dictated that those values have shifted because of their impact on winning. And I think you see that over time as the game changes, the game evolves. Now that being said, the rarest thing that you can find is a difference maker, regardless of position, regardless of your organizational philosophy. And now we have a defensive tackle that's making north of 30 million. We have a guard that's making north of 20 million. You have off the ball linebackers that are making 20 million, because there are players that break the mold. And for us, when we made our decision at running back, we felt like we had a superstar at the position who embodied everything that we wanted within the organization. So we didn't overthink it. It's Nick Chubb, right? And so, for us, it was a pretty straightforward decision, because those difference makers are hard to find.
Andrew, they talk about wear and tear with running backs, but Nick was saying he sort of thinks it's a myth because other positions deal with the same wear and tear. How do you sort of respond to that? That kind of assertion from him is that why are we held to a different standard in terms of wear and tear compared to a receiver or an offensive lineman?
Yeah, I think that the profiles for positions across the sport, all positions aren't created equal. There's durability. He's right. There's durability risk for for any player that a team is thinking about signing to a second or a third deal. Some positions are, more at risk for injury than others, but I think probably more importantly, it's about the individual. It's about the individual and making sure not to lose sight of that.
As a show of solidarity, Nick was on that Zoom call yesterday. Pretty interesting today, where he stepped in front of us and said, "I could be next."
Mm-hmm.
So does he have anything to worry about?
Nick Chubb, I would say this. Nick Chubb is the type of player and person that you hope is with the organization as long as possible. Period. So.
Andrew, going back to the wear and tear with Nick, I mean, do you feel like that is? I mean, because it seemed like even back in Georgia, he wasn't the one, the only guy they had other guys, and then with Kareem and others since he's been in the pro. Do you feel like he's a guy that the workload has been managed well, for him over the course of his career?
Yeah, I think Nick has shown himself to be durable for us. I think you all see on social media how well he takes care of his body, obviously, and he's the consummate professional. So we're hopeful that he can play as long as possible.
Andrew, how do you feel just in general about the season, and what are your expectations?
Yeah, so our expectations they're always going to be high, and we want to be playing our best football, in the later part of the season. But more importantly, our focus is really on the work. We have a lot of work to do over the course of training camp to get ready for the season, and that's really our focus right now.
You're coming off 8, 9, 7, and 10,
Mm-hmm.
so as you said, your focus is on the work, but in the rearview mirror, it's been rough the last 2 years. So going forward, how does that change?
I'd say this: we're not really focused on the rearview mirror. We're not looking there. We're forward focused. We like the group of players and coaches that we have here, and we're looking forward to maximizing each day to
learn
process
from
it.
that stuff. I guess maybe that was a better question. What do you learn
I
from
think
that?
you learn from every year. I probably tell you guys every season, every year is unique, right? And I have I keep a OneNote with every cycle, every season, and every year I review kind of my end of the season or end of draft and free agency notes to draw from those lessons there, because you're right, there are things that you learn or you grow from, and try and apply those lessons moving forward.
You talked to heart a little bit about how he told the team the story last night, before age, and how he feels that his work changed him, and it was a really good interview with Deshaun. So I'm just wondering, where do you see him now as compared to last year? What do you feel his mindset is, and just also from a football standpoint, where you see him?
Yeah, Deshaun. I mean, you heard him speak. He's in a really good place. I think this is going to be a big year for him professionally and personally. We think he's in great shape physically. He's been really good on the field, and I love what he's done off the field. So we're excited about him. Looking forward to see how the next weeks play out, and as we get into the season with our quarterback.
What are you excited to see from the partnership with Kevin, given that they've been together almost a year and a half?
Yeah, I think it's from the general manager seat. It's been pretty cool to just see their relationship continue to just come together. Like it's very natural and organic, Jake. And I think Kevin, like with Kevin's creativity and Deshaun's like talent and work ethic, the things that I think we'll be able to do offensively that maybe we haven't been able to do before. Candidly, I'm pretty excited to see. So I know both of them really from the spring have been in the lab, so to speak, and we're all going to get a chance to see how it comes together here at starting with training camp, and then as we kind of figure out our identity going into the season.
Andrew, I don't think Schwartz can help Miles reach another level.
Yeah.
This year.
Yeah, I think Jim, his scheme and his system, the defensive line in this system, they're the engine. And as he always says, he takes the seatbelt off of those guys. It's about generating negative plays, forced errors, turnovers, and it starts with the D-line, wrecking havoc with a premium on pass rush ability. And that fits Miles to a T. We think we have the best pass rusher in the league with him, and this is a tailor-made kind of match made in heaven, if you will.
I don't think we've talked to you since the za'darius trade. So, what do you think he adds in that mold with Jim and Miles?
Yeah, we can never have enough rushers. I think with Z, the appeal with him is his versatility. He's a high-level rusher who, I think oftentimes people just think of him as an edge guy, but I think really where he's particularly skilled is his ability to rush inside over a guard or center. And he can do the stuff on the edge really well, but having someone who can win quickly inside just gives you so much versatility to create advantageous matchups to rush the passer. So between him, Obo with his speed off the edge, we have a couple power guys, with Dalvin and Siaki. It's a nice blend of skill sets to get after the quarterback.
One more position.
Andrew, this doesn't feel like when you look at some of the competition, it feels like it's back end of the roster competition. There aren't a lot of starting jobs that are up for grabs type of a thing, and a lot of the players are competing for some of those remaining roster spots, or guys going into their third and fourth year. Just, I guess, how do you feel about those two classes, the 2020 class and the 2021 class, as far as their ability to have the type of impact that you're looking for them to have as they get deeper in their NFL career?
Yeah, we feel good about those groups. I would say this: we feel good about the roster in general. I mean, it remains to be seen the competition of starting spots versus maybe more supporting roles within the offense or defense. But we feel good about the competition that we have across the roster, and are looking forward to guys. Some guys will assume bigger roles. Some guys will take another step in their career, and how that all shakes out, that's what the next several weeks are for.
Andrew, is Amari okay?
Yeah, so Amari, minor tweak, will be a day-to-day thing. We're not overly concerned. Yeah. I won't go into the details of where. It's not tied to a surgery or anything like that. We're not worried about it.
One more position group I want to ask you about. Any concerns about your running back depth beyond the first two?
Yeah, I think anytime Kareem was here for 3 years, 4 years. Anytime you move on from a vet, it gives some other players a chance to step up. We feel really good about Jerome. He had a very strong spring, particularly in his pass protection ability, the mental side of it. A big reason that we drafted him in 22 was because of his ability as like a receiver, and we think that he'll be able to play that role really well. But behind Nick and Jerome, there's going to be some competition, Tony, and it remains to be seen who can emerge for that third running back spot. But again, that's what training camp is going to be for.
How much does the change in the kickoff return rules? It feels like the league's just trying to eliminate that altogether. So when you have a combo player that's a receiver return, how much does the rule change impact your calculus when you're thinking not only the numbers game of the position, but the players?
Yeah, it's a great question. It certainly, makes a higher bar for how productive that returner is to have the player on the roster just for that value, because you're right. If you don't have a strong returner, and you could just fair catch it all the time and probably get adequate starting field position. But that's something, honestly, like throughout Bubba's history, he's always done a nice job when he's had a good returner of creating like a top of class return game. So it's something that we will still value, but from a roster building standpoint, I would be lying if I said it didn't give more flexibility in terms of building the room.
How excited are you to see what Elijah Moore can do in this offense and how he fits?
Yeah, very much so. I think Elijah has a skill set that we were looking for. His versatility, his work ethic, his rapport with the quarterback so far. We like what we've seen to date. We just want him to keep stacking together really good days.
Andrew, you mentioned za'darius' versatility. Does that maybe alleviate some of the concern about bringing in another defensive tackle, because he can slide inside on several occasions?
I think certainly how we envision deploying za'darius, certainly how we also just like the way we play the front is going to be a little bit different than maybe what we've seen in the past. It just gives us a lot of flexibility, but I think maybe the primary thing is we like the guys in the room currently. Again, we'll assess that as we go over the next couple of weeks, but there are a number of veterans and younger players in that room that we're looking forward to seeing potentially flourish in Jim's system.
Andrew, there's like a lot of guys like Deshaun and Miles who are talking about different leadership and growing their leadership this year. Do you, as the leader of the organization, are they in your ear? Do you see them talking to you about ways that they can develop that as well?
No, absolutely. Like we take pride in supporting our players, like organizationally, not just say how good can they be on the field, or how are they physically, but in terms of the social, emotional leadership development as well. And we want to make sure, and we do provide resources to our guys in that regard. Fortunately, we have a really hungry locker room with guys that are looking for self-improvement, and we feel fortunate in that regard. Also, like your Jays.
Is there a couple, when you look at the roster change between from here, there's a couple things that emerged that you were thinking about?
Yeah, in terms of like the off season?
Yeah, the off season. No, but you brought in these new guys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there are a couple themes about what you were doing.
Yeah, so we one of the things that we really wanted to do going into the off season was refortify the trenches, and probably really specifically O-line depth, and on the defense side of the ball, add as many rushers as we can, and then really continue to surround our quarterback with with weapons, with Elijah being the primary person there, but guys like Marquis, Cedric, Jordan, as well. So that was probably the primary goals in the off season, but as well as like bring our team together, just because we're going to face the inevitable adversity throughout the season, and we want to make sure we can navigate that.
We're talking about the defensive line being the engine. I mean, you put more money now on the defensive line than you ever had before. Mm-hmm. Connection.
I would say yes and no. Like yes, from the perspective that it was a position group that we were going to have to turn over at some point. We've always actually devoted a fair amount of resources to end, whether it was OV in 2020, Clowney in 2021, and then Clowney again in 2022. And then defensive tackle, we typically had guys like either on rookie contracts or at lower expenditures, but we were just so young there last year, and obviously our focus was on the quarterback and the receiver and that cycle of roster building where, this year we can kind of get back to the trenches on the defense side of the ball.
Nick Chubb's squatting videos scare you?
I always tell Nick, whenever that comes out, I shoot him a text. I'm like, Nick, this is always my favorite, social media clip of the offseason and the most anxiety producing one as well. So he's a freak of nature.